Boilers play an integral part in spring and winter street maintenance. They are used to thaw drainage structures that have ice in them, causing the water to not be able to escape properly. Also, they are used to thaw glaciations in order to put the water back down into the drainage ditch. If water is left to stand on the street surface, potholes begin developing. Or, if the water is flowing across a driveway instead of under the driving surface into an open ditch, erosion takes place. Property damage can be prevalent if the drainage is left unattended. Street maintenance has two types of boilers, the Cleaver-Brooks and the Tech Steam. The difference between the two is that the Tech Steam does not have the ability to contain steam, whereas the Cleaver-Brooks does. Since the majority of our boilers are the Tech Steam boiler, this training video will deal with the Tech Steam. These mobile boilers are extremely safe to operate. If anything will get you into trouble, it will be loose fittings, damaged hoses, or improper fittings that are connected to the boiler hose. This fitting is a compression fitting and not a steam fitting. Compression fittings can only be used for the jet head because when the jet head is in operation, it is inside a confined space, and if it were to separate, no harm can be done. Also, unsafe operating can cause injuries. Before leaving for the field, it is important to do a pre-check of the fluids. Make sure the water supply tank is full. Check the fuel level for the boiler and the auxiliary engine that powers up the boiler. Check the oil level in the auxiliary engine. And also check the oil level in the water pump. Now you're ready to start the boiler and generate some steam pressure. First, start the auxiliary engine up and let it begin warming up. Close all the hose valves and open the dump valve in the steam outlet line. Check to see that the exhaust damper is open. Make sure that the fuel bypass valve is in the open position. Now engage the clutch to the boiler. Physically check to see that water is escaping out of the downspout to the dump valve. Open the 3 bleeder valves to drain debris and bleed the air out of the system. Close the valves once this has been attained. By looking through the sight glass, determine if a spark, which is called the igniter, can be seen. Uncoil the hose off the reel. It is important to take the hose completely off the reel because if left coiled up on the reel, the steam flowing through the hose will generate enough heat to damage the inside, thus weakening the hose and causing it to blister on the outside. Now light the boiler by closing off the fuel bypass valve by turning it clockwise, and this will direct the fuel through the igniter, thus causing the fuel to ignite. The pressure can be regulated with the blade valve. For pre-check purposes, have the fuel pressure set at 80 psi. Once steam has begun to develop, open the valves to the hose reel and then close off the dump valve. This will then let the steam escape out of the hose. While the steam is flowing, check for any severe leaks in the fittings and the hose. Check the safety relief valve to make sure it is functioning properly. If pleased with the performance of the boiler, the cool down process begins. First, shut off the fuel bypass valve. This allows the fuel to cycle back into the holding tank. Continue to let the steam escape out of the hose. As the steam pressure drops, it begins to convert back to water. This may take some time. Let the water continue to flow through the hose to dissipate the heat until the hose is cool to the touch. Open the dump valve and then shut off the hose valve. Disengage the clutch and then shut off the auxiliary engine. Roll the hose back up on the reel, and now you are ready to head for the field and begin the thawing operation. The operating of the boiler in the field is much like the procedure used in the pre-check, with the exception of bleeding the debris and air from the 3 bleeder valves and checking the safety relief valve. These need to be checked only once a shift. Also, depending on the operation, you may need to increase or decrease the steam pressure by regulating the fuel pressure with the blade valve. If only a banjo is needed for the job, the pressure should be kept low, around 80 psi. This helps to eliminate a lot of splashing. There are several different thawing scenarios and techniques utilized to get the job done. We will be covering 2 of these types of operations, and the techniques used can generally be used on most operations. The first is the use of the banjo. The banjo is used for several things. Its main function is to cut channels to direct the water toward the intended area. It can be used to help in locating drainage structures under the snow cover because of the width of the tool. The second type of operation is the use of the jet head. The jet head has a small hole drilled in the front end with several small holes drilled in the back of the middle section. With steam escaping through the holes in the front, it melts the ice ahead, while the steam escaping out the holes in the back help propel it and the hose along through the pipe that is being thawed. A metal detector is used to locate the drainage structures and metal culvert ends. Once the structure is located and the lid removed, place an object that is above the water level beside the open hole to warn you and your partner of the hazard. The lid, as used in this case, or a cone, work well in marking it. After finding the outlet pipe with the standpipe and inserting the standpipe into the lateral, thread the jet head and hose down into the standpipe as far as that can be physically pushed. Activate the steam pressure to the hose. Fuel pressure should be set for about 135 to 150 psi so that maximum pressure is utilized. In a matter of seconds, depending on the cleanliness of the pipe, the hose will begin feeding itself through the lateral. The cleaner the pipe, the faster it will travel with very little help. If the pipe has sediment in the bottom, it will travel a lot slower depending on the amount. Also, pushing the hose from on top may be needed to help in propelling it along in this case. It is extremely important to monitor the water level. Do not let the water level get below 1 foot in the sight glass. You can tell when the lateral is free of ice and water is now moving by observing a small whirlpool develop. If thawing an open culvert and the air temperature is cool enough to freeze the surface of the standing water, the ice along the edges will begin to crack, and then air pockets will begin forming as the water recedes. Now that the job is complete, the cool down process begins. Shut off the fuel supply to the boiler with the fuel bypass valve. Begin dragging the hose out of the lateral until the jet head reaches the lower end of the standpipe. Do not pull it any further. This acts as a buffer. Cool down the hose until it is cool to the touch. Open the dump valve and close off the valve to the hose. The clutch can then be disengaged and the auxiliary engine turned off. Proceed taking the hose out of the standpipe and rolling it up on the respective reel. The reason for not letting the hose lay in the lateral during the cooling down process is because once the steam begins converting back to water, a vacuum begins to take place, and little particles of dirt from the dirty culvert can be sucked into the holes in the jet head and plug them up. At the end of the shift, the boiler needs to be blown down to help in keeping the scaling that is forming on the inside of the boiler housing to a minimum. With a load of steam on, open the blowdown valve all the way and let the steam escape through the downspout for about 30 to 45 seconds. Do this in an area where it will not cause a sight problem for commuters or pedestrians. Hopefully this video will help in answering any questions about the Tech Steam boiler and its operation. The most important thing to keep in mind is to always have a steam escape valve open at all times with the Tech Steam boiler. Remember, this can be a dangerous tool if certain procedures and items are left unattended, but if you follow the methods demonstrated in this video, you will have a safe operation.